I think any global pandemic, as devastating and traumatic as it might be for people, it's also can be such a, the silver lining of it can be a huge conscious awakening opportunity. Is that how you're seeing it? Is that how you're approaching it?
Well, thank you, Nathan, because I'm with you. And again, through history, whenever there's been a major disruption, whether ecological or on whatever level, humans adapt. And typically, and you can see this in your personal life. I mean, if you look to where there's been relationship breakups, losses, etc., when we hit our edge, we can actually end up calling on deeper wisdom and more love than we had been habitually living from. So I think that is the hope right now. I think we're also seeing it. I mean, it's been amazing how people, in all the fear that's been whipped up, have really reached out to each other, the level of connectedness. I had one friend we have a meditation group in Washington who they've been meeting by Zoom and taking the risk to be really vulnerable, and the level of connections dropped so much more deeply. And one woman called into the Zoom group, and she was calling from an isolation. She was COVID, and the only people she had seen were in the hazmat suits, and to be able to still maintain that kind of connection and show up for each other. We do that when things get tough. And I'll say one more thing about that really struck me, which is many people listening will know of Dorothy Day, the Catholic activist. When there was an earthquake, when she was a child, an 8-year-old in San Francisco, in I think 1908 or 6, I'm not sure exactly which. She was there and she watched the devastation, and she watched people coming out of it. And she watched how the adults were reaching out to help each other. It didn't matter if they knew each other and so on. And her question was, why can't we live this way all the time? And I feel like this is our question, Nathan, that we know when things get shooken up, that it actually brings us to an edge and we can get soft and we can wake up compassion. But how do we, when life gets a little more habitual, I think that's where the inquiry is. How can we remember? How can we let what's going on now seed a world where there really is more loving, there is more compassion?
Well, I want to come back to that question in a moment, because I think you probably have some great wisdom and insights you can shed some light on of how we can do that. And, I have a question that may lead into that as well, is, what do you see through all of your work and research and experience as to be maybe some of the core reasons that so many people experience chronic stress and anxiety and fear, whether it's over a global pandemic or, the potential loss of a job or loss of a loved one, or just an ongoing underlying, slow burning fire of stress and anxiety? What are some of those core causes that you've found?
Well, I'll speak for myself that when I'm feeling anxious, it's because I'm feeling separate. In some way, I'm not so connected to myself. I'm not in my body. If we're talking, I'm feeling like I'm presenting, but not feeling the humanness and the shared field of presence. I get anxious when I'm disconnected. And our world has a huge amount of disconnection. We're very disconnected from the earth. I mean, we wouldn't be destroying the earth if we knew our belonging to the earth. So we're very disconnected from the earth. And our children, even before they had to be sheltering at home because of the pandemic, they were sheltering at home in front of a screen. Anyway, they're separated from the outdoors. In our families and our societies, we have to meet certain standards to feel acceptable. And it's very competitive. And I call this in my book, Radical Acceptance, the trance of unworthiness, because for so many of us, the stress comes from feeling I'm not good enough. that I'm not, you know, our parents give us a message of you should look this way, you should act this way, you should achieve this way. And then our societies are so hierarchical that if you happen to be in the non-dominant population, that message comes on even heavier. Toni Morrison writes that in this country, to be American means to be white. You know, it's like everybody else has to hyphenate, she says, right? We forget how painful it is to feel not enough. And for most of us deep down, there is that core sense of falling short. And that creates a deep stress, because if we fall short, we'll be rejected. And that's what we're afraid of. So things are speeding up in our society. We're more on tablets. We're less connected to the earth. We're less connected to our body. It's a setup for chronic anxiety.